Good, good.
Awesome. We are going to go ahead and get started here with John Morrow.
Okay.
Good morning, Sean. I hope all's well.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Good. Just looking at your defense and how much it has improved over the course of the last half of the season. And how much does, what Taron Johnson did and Micah Hyde knocking down the pass against Indy and just the things that Josh Norman returning a pick for a touchdown, how much does that gradual improvement maybe validate the patience that you've showed with that unit and perhaps reinforce confidence in the entire team going into this game?
Well, I think it more than anything, John, to your question, it emphasizes and highlights a very resilient group of players that have continued to develop all the way through a season. And that's important because it is a journey. There's going to be highs and lows through a season. And those players have done a phenomenal job of learning from previous situations and experiences and then building on it as they move forward throughout the year.
And the other story that I'm working on is on elite receivers in the playoffs, and you've got one in Stephon Diggs. The common wisdom theory is that, defenses need to shut down, top threats on the other side. But it seems that guys like Diggs and Adams and Tyreek Hill seem to be unguardable. What does that say about players like that at this time of year?
Well, I'll tell you, it keeps me up at night trying to figure out how to guard, and our defensive staff trying to figure out how to slow down their offense. Tyreek Hill being one of them, and Kelsey, of course. But yeah, I mean, they're phenomenal players. I've had a chance to be around Diggs on our side, and I'm sure Tyreek on their side, the two you mentioned in particular. Just an honor to be around players that can play at that level, can play this game at that level. And as consistent as they've both been. So a lot of respect, certainly on our side for Diggs, but also Tyreek as well. And I'm sure they feel the same.
Thanks very much, Sean.
Sure.
Sean, between Brian and Leslie, they've coached in 12 championship games. I know you have as well. And a couple of Leslie was with you. I'm wondering, when you formulate your staff, and I know you hired Leslie your first year, and Brian came along the second year. Do you think about that? Do you think about the experience they have in those kinds of games, or is it just experience and, just the quality of coach? But does that come into play as well?
Well, being around winning programs outside of being good people and those types of things that you look for, being around winning programs and being in those environments, being in those games, to your point, I think all of that breeds quality experience. And so that's all good to have this time of year, but it also helps you get to where we are now. So when you've been around what winning looks like, smells like, so on and so forth, I think that's a good foundation to come from.
And Sean, I don't know if you saw earlier this morning, we just saw that Phillip Rivers retired. You faced him your first year as a defensive coordinator. And then again, now, obviously in his last game, I know you have a lot of reverence for him, but just his overall career, if you just talk about what you've seen from him and how great of a career he had.
Yeah, one of the best that I've ever been around at that position. I put him in the same category as all those elite quarterbacks. Extremely smart. I'm sure there's a lot of defensive coordinators right now around the league breathing a sigh of relief, but and with all respect to what Phil has been able to do and just the quality of person he is off the field, even when you go against him. I had a chance to be around him at the Pro Bowl several years ago, and what a competitive guy, but also a high character man and a guy with great core values.
Thanks, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Jenna Cottrell in Rochester. Just curious, with everything at stake this weekend, how are you preparing your guys in terms of just the nerves element, that human element of it, especially with the expected environment at Arrowhead?
Yeah, I think that's where the experience comes in. As Sal mentioned, Leslie has experience, a significant amount, as well as Brian and some of the other members of our staff. So we bank on that experience, and we'll get our team ready to go. And we know it's going to be a tough environment against the defending world champs. And so we've got to have a great week of preparation for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, Sean, good morning. Any update on who's going to, anybody that might be out of practice today? Any update on any injuries?
Yeah, everything's pretty much status quo as it was the other day. I can tell you that Gabe and Vernon Butler, neither of those two will practice today for us.
Okay. And in terms of Matt Milano, some of the numbers that, you start digging into this season, you guys are 12-0 with him on the field, just some, points against, passing, rushing yards against. It's pretty amazing the impact that he's made when he's been on the field. It's no secret he's a good player. But if you could, in your own words, put it, what does he mean to this defense and how well has he been playing, particularly as he's gotten healthier here the last few weeks?
Yeah, I just think, he does a great job of doing his 111th. That's important. And, Matt's a great young man that it's been fun to watch him grow as a Buffalo Bill over the course of his career. And he puts in a lot of time into his job and doing his job at a high level, which is what you just described.
Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, Josh Reed here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, got you, Josh.
Okay. Question for you. Have you had a chance to speak with Star Lotulelei at all during the season or recently? Obviously, I know he's a guy that was very close to you when you brought him in.
Yeah, we've stayed in touch here and there throughout the season. Obviously, I'm sure with his situation, he's tending to his family and himself out there, and we're obviously tied up here as well. But we've stayed in touch throughout the season, yes.
The Jerry Hughes, a couple of sacks in the last game against the Ravens, 3 sacks a couple of playoff games ago. What is it about him that just seems to really flip the switch and the spotlight's the brightest?
Well, he's a competitive guy, and he's worked and worked at it a long time to get himself and this organization to where we are now. And so I think he's hungry and he's one of our leaders. And so I think he is, to your point, he's playing at a high level and he seems extremely hungry to take a new step each week, which is good to have.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Sean, it's Jay with the Buffalo News. You mentioned earlier guys like Tyreek Hill and the weapons Kansas City has of keeping you up at night, but having a guy like Tre'Davious, does that let you rest just a little bit easier knowing that you've got a bona fide number 1 cornerback who you can feel pretty good about the matchup going into a week?
Yeah, I mean, listen, good players make all coaches look a lot better than we are, right? And I think that's the case, and extremely grateful to have Tre'Davious here. And I think Brandon did a great job with Tre'Davious' agent getting a deal done. This is why you do what you do with a corner like that, and so I really appreciate what he's been able to do for us, and not only on the field, but the energy he brings off the field as well is phenomenal.
When you watched his game the other night, I thought it was a really complete game in terms of run support, his usual good coverage, and then the fabulous hustle play to get out and block on Terran's interception. Did you feel the same way about just a really, really complete game and showing what he's evolved into as a player, not just as a coverage guy?
Yeah, I mean, he had that foundation when he came to us. What we've seen now is him develop that even more. And so he had a great foundation coming from LSU and Coach Aranda down there. And now what he's been able to develop, being in our environment here in Buffalo, and also the work, because of the work he puts in during the season and in the off season, to be honest with you. So a true professional.
Thank you.
Hi, Sean. Adam Benini, just a thought, maybe perspective on your defense from the last time that you guys faced them, where they were at that point. You had some injuries you were dealing with at that time also, to maybe the level they're playing at now heading into this matchup with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think it's 2 good football teams. It's kind of been trending that way for however long you guys have narrated that over the course of the last 6 weeks, last back half of the season in the NFL. 2 good football teams. We feel like, we're improving every week. I'm sure they feel the same. And our defense, has continued to develop as well. And you hope that's the case with our entire football team.
And just one follow-up, if I can, Josh, just given his growth arc, how prepared do you think he is for a game like this on a stage like this here now, year 3 in?
Yeah, I mean, this is the next step for Josh, and this is what you want. This is what you work for. This is what he's worked for. So he'll be ready, and we're extremely confident in Josh.
Thanks, Sean.
Yep.
Hey, good morning, Sean. Quick question for you, man. I was hoping you could just speak to the overall job that Brian has done to help develop Josh as an all-around quarterback, both with his mechanics and then helping him through scheme ways too. I think the Bills are generally respected for the different ways you scheme up your offense and, not make things easy for the quarterback, but help the quarterback like all good teams do.
Yeah, Brian's done a really good job. He's an important member of our staff, and those two have an important relationship and a critical relationship, and it's a good relationship. And so, they spend probably more time together than any player and coach in our building, and that's again essential to the job that has to get done. And so they've got a great rapport, the two of them, and so Brian has done a real nice job of helping Josh develop and on the field and off the field and see the game the way a quarterback in his 3rd year that's trending in that upward direction needs to see the game.
One quick follow-up, Sean. You've been in this league a long time, and you've seen a lot of different quarterbacks roll through. Can you speak to the importance of the second reaction ability, the increased importance of the off-schedule play in today's football, and why it doesn't feel like it's a coincidence a lot of the league's best quarterbacks have that trait?
Well, some of these plays break down from time to time, even though we draw them up for that not to happen. They tend to break down from time to time. And to your point, being able to extend a play or play off schedule or make loose plays, I know that's been labeled to Josh and Patrick as well. So I think that's a good asset to have.
Thank you.
Hey, Coach, good morning. Herbie Keobi here with the Kansas City Star. I wanted to follow up on John Worrell's question earlier when you were mentioning elite players in the league. You mentioned Diggs, you mentioned Kelsey, and you mentioned Tyreek Hill. But throughout your career, you've also been around other elite players like Luke Kuechly down in Carolina. And what is the common trait or the attribute that you see in these players and the desire to be great or elite?
Well, I think you just said it, the desire to be great and doing whatever it takes to continue to improve themselves. And that hunger, that burning desire to be great that's inside. And the really good ones, the great ones that you mentioned, the names that you mentioned, those are great players and they have it.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Coach, good morning. Question about playing a team a second time in the season. Divisionally, I know you do it, but some of the nuances that are there comes up in this situation, right, with the playoffs. It seems like coaches a lot of times the one that wins maybe is at a disadvantage. You feel like you got to go back and do what you did before. Otherwise, maybe you look foolish that, hey, why didn't you, you were pounding the run. Why were you throwing it all around? Andy Reid seems to not maybe be a slave to that. You seem to, and you look at some of the games, is that something that, is kind of, you remember Coach Reid talking about, or is there an approach, a certain style and how you handle that second game in the same season?
Well, I just think it's, you look at it as experience, and there's no substitute for experience. You try and learn from every situation you're in, and like in life, right? Not try and make the same mistake twice. That's probably just the best answer I could give you. I don't really have a recipe or formula for it.
And then as a follow-up, running the football, right? Like that, the old days, you go back. I know when Coach Reid got in, you had to run the ball. That was priority number one. Covering Kansas City sports, I can remember Marty Schottenheimer. We're here to run the ball and stop the run. Very different game. Your game plan against Baltimore, obviously very different. Do you remember when that kind of shifted, where maybe the for lack of a better term, stigma of not running the ball maybe came away and it was just about moving the ball?
Well, I just know being in the Philadelphia organization with Andy and his philosophy, as well as leadership's philosophy, I felt like, although I wasn't in that realm at that point, was we needed to throw to win back then even, and so that's where I think Andy was ahead of the game, as well as at that point the Eagles organization, from a leadership standpoint, was ahead of the game and a mentality standpoint. So, he's obviously had the success he's had because he's the way he is.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah. Is that a Syracuse sweatshirt?
Yes, sir, it is.
Love it. Love it.
Hey, Coach, good morning. I just wanted to ask you, kind of building off what Soren was saying, can you speak to, from the coaching standpoint, what this means to you as someone who has come up under that Andy Reid tree?
Well, it's always an honor to go up against great coaches. I mean, Andy will be a Hall of Fame coach here in the future at some point down the road. And, I've learned, and I've said this time and time again, I've learned a lot from Andy Reid in my time with him in Philadelphia. And so I have a tremendous amount of respect for him and his family, the way they helped guide me then and still do today. His wife, Tammy, is tremendous, and the way she is an ambassador as well to the league and the wives in the league, the head coach's wives in particular. And so they've really set the mold of how this thing needs to get done and done the right way.
And kind of building on that, you actually got to learn from the great Jim Johnson when it comes to being a defensive guru. What are some of the traits that you took from him and, of course, building this Buffalo defense being to where they are today?
Yeah, well, I think you see some of the same traits in Spags' defense in Kansas City. Spags was there as well with us. And there's just some, I guess, traits overall, character traits of the defense, teams that want to affect the quarterback. Jim was big on that. I know he had I don't know if hate's a strong word, but I think he had a very high dislike for opposing quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, he respected the quarterbacks. And I think as you mentioned, the different quarterbacks, Phillip Rivers just retiring, they're really hard to go against. And you end up disliking those guys because they get in the way of having success. But you have so much respect for those guys because that's what drives our game and our league, quite honestly.
Thank you, Coach.
Sure.
Hey, Sean, it's Adam Teicher at ESPN. I got a couple questions about Tyrann Mathieu for you. As you know, the Chiefs line him up in a variety of spots, asking to do a lot of different things. Curious your opinion. How is that kind of versatility? How many players have you come across with that kind of versatility? Is that unusual in your opinion?
Yeah, he's a great player. Watched his career unfold at LSU and the different places he's been. Man, he brings a lot of energy and juice to their team and their defense. In this case, he does a great job disguising, playing multiple positions. He seems extremely smart. I've never really been around him, quite honestly, but I know he's a big factor in Spags' defense out there and probably one of the top players in the league.
And knowing where he is pre-snap, any more important or any less important with him than any other defender out there?
Well, I think it is a factor, and you need to be aware of where he is. They do a great job disguising. I mean, I was around Spags in Philadelphia, and I think that's probably where one of the things he taught me was the way we used to disguise with Dawkins back in Philadelphia and the safeties that played alongside of Brian. And so I know Spags is big with that.
Thank you.
Hey, Sean, Jeff McClain here. You've spoken before a lot about, how Andy firing you after 2010 was probably maybe for the best. And you've spoken before about what it did for you in terms of looking at maybe your career arc and reassessing and changing how you coached. But I want to ask you a different question, maybe off that. I mean, what do you think may have happened had you stayed and actually remained the defensive coordinator?
I mean, at the end of the day, God's plan unfolded, Jeff. And what would it, I mean, you're asking me to use a crystal ball of what would have happened in Philadelphia. I can only tell you, I mean, I know this, that everyone in their life goes through a crucible moment like that, or moments, and it's what you do with them that defines how far you go. And so I'm thankful that God had a plan for me and my family to, at the moment, to go to Carolina, at that moment to go to Carolina, and extremely grateful for that opportunity to be in that organization with Ron Rivera, and then to come to Buffalo. So that's really been my path.
All right, Coach, that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.